Hello and welcome to this Silly Point podcast. My name is Phil Dillon. I'm joined today by Declan Hooper from Wikis and Pickets and Richard Hanson. Okay, we're going to talk about the Ashes today, boys. So, England squad name this week. A few that are not there, who in my opinion should be there. What's your thoughts, first of all?
Maybe we could start off by actually talking about the absolute storm in a teacup that happened a week or two ago, with everyone losing their shit, for lack of a better word, in regards to quarantine. Will it not happen? The Ashes isn't going ahead. And basically, I mean, everyone just needed to cool their jets a week and then it was all fine.
Well, yes and no. And I say this sitting here in England, and I can tell you that there's definitely a lot of annoyance. You know, the Barmy Army won't be there. Yes, obviously the matches will be played. It's great to see that obviously Australia's opening up again, you know, and there'll be crowds presumably. But it's looking very unlikely that there will be any foreign crowds. So I think the one caveat to that is that, I mean, one of the major parts of the Ashes, the off-field story, is the Barmy Army, and it's a real shame. And I say this as a neutral. It's a real shame that they're not going to be able to be there. I mean, there'll obviously be a few kind of expat, Australian-based English fans who will kind of form.
Well, there'd be more than a few, let me tell you.
Indeed,
more than a few.
but not being able to have, of course, but not being able to have a contingent come over from England is definitely something that is different. So yeah.
No trumpeter.
No. Well, you might have to get an Australian-based trumpeter.
Yeah, you might have to bring your trumpet, Phil. I think. Look, I do agree.
Sounds very rude.
I do think. I do think that. I suppose the verbal tennis by both the Australian media and the British media is kind of. I mean, we can expect that every Ashes that this happens, but I do think it's started a bit early this year. And then you've got Kevin Peterson, Michael Vaughan, and of course Tim Payne, all just absolutely pouring petrol on the fire and making, as I said, a complete media shitstorm. What do you make of that, Phil?
I don't know. I think Kevin Peterson needs to pull his head in a bit, because who gives a shit about what he says? The only person I sort of like give any credence to is Michael Vaughan, because he sees both sides. He seems to see both sides of it. Tim Payne is just a complete and utter wanker in my eye. He's just like somebody with hardly. I mean, he's a talented cricketer. Obviously, he has to be a test player. But when Australia haven't toured for 2 years or more, and then they send B teams to Bangladesh and West Indies, and then there's some of their players who say, I'd go at the drop of a hat, like Nathan Lyon, weren't anywhere near any teams whatsoever. I know that he hasn't played one-day games, but seriously.
The thing that I don't understand about Tim Payne is last Australian summer, when India came, he was caught chatting away to the Indian players, and then it came back to bite him in the arse. And he's doing exactly the same thing. I mean, personally, I don't think England are going to win. However, if you've just had that experience where you've said something publicly, whether it's on a stump mic, you know, sledging, etc., whether it's through the media or not, and then you go and lose a test series to India for the first time in forever, maybe just watch what you say. I was a little bit surprised. I mean, let's be honest, they're trying to, you know, get the PR machine gearing, you know, roll up into gear, and obviously they want to generate interest in the Ashes, and obviously there are players from England who can't go, so they're going to try and have a bit of a side story. So I mean, let's see if that chat continues. Now we'll chat about it later, but you know, the World Cup's coming up, to the T20 World Cup, so there will at least be some cricket played in an international way. So I think there's just been a bit of a void of no cricket at the moment, so people just start shouting into that void.
I think it was somewhat calculated from him. I don't think he was necessarily like. I think, as I said, I think he's not necessarily the guy that just blurt shit. I think he is, but I think it was a calculated move, and especially on the part of saying that basically as much as saying, Joe Root doesn't have to come out if he doesn't want to. He's his own human being, so either play or fuck off was the general gist of what he said. which like he knows as well as anyone that Joe Root's going to be out here for the summer. Like it was getting the PR machine going early, definitely. And I mean, he's got his own radio show in Tasmania apparently. So, I mean, is it him driving hits and driving clicks for his radio show? Probably. But you know, it did make for, I suppose, a bit of sport while there was no sport on.
The only thing about it, Declan, is that Tim Payne, who's supposed to be the new face of the new look in Australia, you know, we're doing this because we're nice blokes. We're nice blokes, Justin Langer. We're all good guy. And then as soon as the shit hits the fan, they revert to type and they become like Michael Clark, go break. Hope you get a broken fucking arm, all that shit, and that's what happens. They can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. And Justin Langer, for all his what I'm doing this, I'm changing this and changing that, is the fucking leader of it all.
To be honest, mate, I prefer it this way. Like I've grown up with Australia being the aggressor in most encounters, right? And at least we're not hiding it anymore. At least you know.
Look, you know, you grew up when Australia was the aggressor, but you also grew up when, you know, Langer, Hayden, Ponting, Clark, Warren, McGrath, Gillespie, Gilchrist. You know, I could keep naming these players who are absolute world beaters. So yeah, you're right. I mean, if you want to be aggressive, but you're going to win by an innings and 400 runs every time you turn out to play, sure. But at the moment, you know, Australia are. And I say this as a supporter of the champions of the Test world. You know, just putting that out there. Australia are quite mediocre, especially. Yeah,
definitely.
You know, they're nowhere near at the peak of their powers, and they're just kind of lucky that at the moment they're going to be hosting England in an environment which is more friendly to them. But yeah, I mean, I think if India came again, they'd probably beat them. I think they'd probably struggle to beat a number of sides at the moment, to be honest, especially away from home.
Definitely.
Yeah, don't forget they have the Red Bull. They haven't played a Red Bull game for 2 years.
Well, I was going to touch on that, Phil. I think. Do you think that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, obviously, it can't be a great thing that Australia hasn't played a Test in literally almost a year now, and that their only preparation going into the Ashes is Shield cricket.
Yeah,
I mean, England. Obviously, there's the T20 World Cup whereby, you know, there's a number of players who play all forms of the game. But England aren't pretty much the same. I mean, I know they've played test matches through to September, but there's still an extended break without playing any cricket. So I'm not sure how much of an advantage that'll give England.
Well, they've been match hardened though, which is what Australia haven't been. Australia haven't had the you know, the ins and outs of Test cricket for 2 years, and England have come through that bubble. So I reckon they'll have a team spirit. And like you say, there are Josh Butlers in the T20, Johnny Bairstow, David Milan.
Personally, I think, you know, you look at that. I look at that squad, and I don't see anyone that's going to score enough runs to worry Australia. I can't see them scoring 400 in the first innings, and I look at that bowling lineup, and I can't see them taking 20 wickets on Australian pitches.
Australia haven't seen Ollie Robinson. They haven't seen Zach Crawley. They haven't seen. I know Zach Crawley hasn't had a great summer in England, but I reckon he'll be better in Australian conditions because he'll prefer the bouncier pitches because he plays off the back foot a little bit more. Same with Hamid. I know Hamid is either hit or miss, definitely.
I think he's, to be honest, looking at him, I think he's huffed and not run the house down thus far, but I think he's the one that I think might do something in Australia. I think again, the bouncy pitches will probably help him. And I also think he scored a lot of runs in county cricket, So I think different arena, obviously, but I think out of all of them, he's the one that seems like he could do something as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, the only thing I think that might work in England's favour, and it comes back to with us talking about the Australian attitude and how they're kind of reverting to type, is that if the going does get tough, for some reason, if they find themselves not taking wickets in the fourth innings or, something along those lines, struggling, England might be able to capitalize because they don't have that level of leadership. Obviously, they've got a mediocre top middle order at the moment, but they've still got a good bowling attack. And Nathan Lyon is, one of the greatest spin bowlers Australia's seen. So, a couple of others as well, notably. But he's still an incredibly good player. But there's not that captain figure, like we say. Tim Payne for me is not up to scratch as a leader. To be able to pull his side out of those tight spots. I mean, look at what happened at Headingley in 2019. Australia should have won that Test match 99 times out of 100. And look at what happened in Brisbane last summer. Look what happened in Sydney last summer when India scrapped their way to a draw. So if England managed to kind of get their noses in front at some point in that series, then they could capitalize on that fact. But at this stage, I'm just not seeing enough players on paper to worry the Australians.
I think the biggest thing is the X factor and the cutting edge. I mean, Ben Stokes not being there obviously is a massive miss. But then I also think that Jofra again is that absolute cutting edge that I think you need to win Ashes in Australia.
Yeah.
I just can't see. I mean, Joe Root has literally the whole team on his shoulders, and I think Joe Root hasn't got a great record in Australia, but I do think he will absolutely score runs this time around. He's just in such good form that I'd be so surprised if he doesn't. But in saying that might not even be enough. I mean, he'd have to score.
It's not enough. You look at the 2010-11 Ashes, the last time that England actually came away from Australia victorious. If Strauss and Cook failed, then Trott didn't fail. If Trott failed, then Peterson didn't fail. If Peterson didn't fail, Bell didn't fail. Like Collingwood, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it goes, there was a side there that could collectively score a huge amount of runs. And like you say, Joe Root's probably going to score some runs. But there need to be some others who are going to back him up, and I just don't see it at this stage. We mentioned this before, obviously, but I think having the Barmy Army there and having the English support does actually lift the team. England are incredibly lucky. They're kind of the only team in world cricket that have such a good travelling sort of mob of fans, and I think the Australian cricket public are going to be desperate to get back out again. It's 2021 in Australia has been a horrible year for you guys, as you know. I don't have to tell you. So people are going to be desperate to go out and watch live sport. The MCG on Boxing Day, if it's allowed to be full, is going to be full of 100,000 screaming Australians, and it's only going to play into the Aussies' hands.
I do think you underestimate how many expats will turn out though for the
Absolutely.
UK. I do think we have to say, I think the Barmy Army is a huge miss. I do have to caveat that as well, though, in saying that there's obviously not going to be the same numbers or anything like that as past years, but looking at Sydney and how they're going, there may actually be some kind of wiggle room for them to get out for at least some of the tests. I don't know if that will actually happen and eventuate or not, but it looks like it's, borders are starting to loosen up and stuff like that. And
it's not beyond the realms of possibility, sure.
No.
Yeah.
But even in saying that, I think, we all know a handful of Brits living in Australia and that kind of thing. Judging by, the Euros and all that kind of thing, where all the Brits turned out for that kind of thing, I think there will be a big turnout from the expat population.
Going back to the actual cricket as well, I mean, you say that England can't score without Joe Root, but I only have looking at the Australian side without Steve Smith. Where are the runs coming from there?
Labuschagne, but
yeah. Where really?
I
think he hasn't been like kicking the door down in Sheffield Shield cricket.
I actually watched him the other day for Queensland, and he scored 30 odd easily, and
he gets himself out. So
I think Phil, genuinely, I think he'll score. He's putting the two teams side by side. I think you've got two guys that are very capable of scoring runs for Australia. I think you've only got one very capable person for England.
Don't forget, and I know we love to bag him, and I'm the first person to bag him, but David Warner is a flat track bully. If David Warner is going to come back into form, he's going to do it on Australian decks. So, this is a guy who scored 100 before lunch before. And so, like, I know he's desperately out of form, and I know there's lots, other stuff that's going on, but he's another one that could come good. You just never know, especially on Australian pitches.
I suspect this might spell the end for David Warner, just quietly. I think I just think if he doesn't start well, I think if it gets to, say, the third test and he's not scoring runs, I think the pressure might mount on him significantly, because I think he has to hit the ground running.
Yeah, you're right. And like I said, he's not performed in the IPL. It'll be interesting to see how he goes in the T20 World Cup. I know it's a different, I know it's a different form of the game, but yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe he'll jump before he's pushed, perhaps. He's not getting any younger either.
No, well, I think there seems to be some significant openers that are scoring runs in Shield. Like you like to hear Bryce Street. Will Bukowski. I was just reading before. Will Bukowski's copped. He copped another head knock, as I saw.
Number 10, I've heard. Number 10. That's crazy. He's had 10 concussions.
He's like 23 as well. His career might be finished before it even starts.
I know. It's so sad because he's such a talented young man.
Well, exactly. But in saying all that, I do think that there is, in the position of opener, there is some significant talent coming through in Shield cricket.
Mate, Shield cricket is like playing tiddlywinks compared to playing in the Ashes, mate. So
you could say the same about the county champion. You could say the same about the county championship.
Exactly. So the only test is the test, and until they come up for that, then you can't say what's going to happen at all. I think 5-0 could happen. 5-0 could easily happen, but if England do something at the Brisbane, then they could get on a roll as well. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but because I'm always a glass half empty when it comes to England.
My point was more that you are completely right in the sense that it is a different test arena. But my point is that it's not like David Warner's spot is it's infallible. Like if that's where the pressure comes, if he stops scoring runs and there is someone in the Shield that is scoring runs, that's when we could see a change. And look, they might come in and do fuck all, but
it's the only way you make it into Test cricket, really, and that's whether that's for Australia or whether it's for England, is you make runs in either the Sheffield Shield or in the County Championship. Like I hear what you're saying. Like obviously, you can, it's many people we know who have made runs at first class level and have failed in the Test arena. We know that, right? Yes. But it is the only kind of acceptable breeding ground. You're not going to be like a franchise cricketer who's out doing wonderful things in T20 and then all of a sudden you're in the Test team, unless you're Jofra Archer, I suppose.
Well, moving on, mate. Your mate, No Dom Sibley, who is finally gone down. Although we were just chatting off air, he will still be in Australia for the Ashes. We take him bets now that he will, even though being dropped from the England squad, he will play a test at some point this tour.
No, I've got more chance of playing than he has, mate, to be honest. He's on the Lions tour. If he comes in, then England have really...
I'm telling you.
I'm not knocking it. He's probably a really nice guy, and he has got runs for Warwickshire in the county championship. He got runs in the final, not big runs, but he got a 50. But a typical Dom Sibley, got to 50 and got himself out. No, I can't see him coming back in unless obviously that there's injuries to
if it's
players
5-0
up the top.
If it's 5-0, which in my neutral opinion is going to be, they're going to do. England are going to do what England always do, and they're going to chop and change around because I'm sure the top order will be failing. So I'd be willing to put some money on to the fact that we're going to see Dom Sibley. I think we're going to see Mahmood as well, which I think is a good thing. I think he should have been. I think he should have been picked anyway. When Mark Wood breaks down, which he probably will. And I think we're going to see a few others as well.
I understand why they only named a squad of 17, considering the what's been going on in the world. Plus the fact that there was the chances of somebody getting COVID-19 on the plane or whatever, or coming across,
or just getting injured just in the normal way, and it's obviously harder to bring replacements in quickly, isn't it? So Having a line
exactly.
squad.
Yeah, it is. I thought they would have named it.
Keep your
there's
phone
a
on,
chance
Phil.
that somebody chance. Yeah, I've got my phone on. There's a chance that somebody could get injured at the 2020 World Cup, and there's a few of them in the side. I would have personally picked Matt Parkinson. That gives you a little bit different with the leg spin, and I would have definitely picked Liam Livingston as well, just in the middle order, give you a little bit more the Josh Butler type player that can change. He's a sort of bloke who can change. He's a bit like Adam Gilchrist used to be. He can change the game and just like that. And he plays the same way, whether it's 2020 or 4-day stuff. He's untried.
Folks is there as well, isn't he? Is Folks?
No,
Folks
is
in the
Lions. Yeah,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Folks is in the Lions.
Parkinson's in the Lions as well.
Dom Sibley, Folks, and somebody else who's played Test cricket is in the.
Bracey's in there as well, I think.
Yeah,
I think it's
Bracey. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of guys that Cass as well who's done well in the county championship. Look, I reckon if they have to dip into that Lions squad, they will. I think it's almost a guarantee. Yeah, but I'm hoping against hope. No, nothing against Dom Sibley as a person, but I don't think he's good enough Test cricket. I personally think, and I'm sticking my neck out here, I think Zach Crawley will do better in Australia than he has done on the Indian wickets, and I think he's too classy a player to stay in that rut of form that he's been in. He's looked good. He's played well for Kent over the last couple of years, so I reckon I'm backing on him to be like somebody who can rise above, and hopefully stand out if they pick him in the top 3 or 4. I don't know. Sure, I'm not going to.
Well, the other thing is, I think he showed enough talent to persist with. He's young enough, and he showed enough talent to kind of persist with. I think that's been England's biggest problem for the last 2-3 years is that they've really just chopped and changed so much that they haven't had a settled lineup. And this is where you like to your Dom Sibleys and whatever else have got probably more tests than they deserve. And I think they just need to stick with it for better or for worse. And look, if they end up losing the Ashes, well, look, at least then they've got a test-hardened squad that have done a big tour in Australia that will stand them in good stead for the future. I'm not saying they will necessarily lose, and they should, putting all their chips into winning. But I think in Zach Crawley's case, I just don't. It's not good for his development to be in and out of the squad so frequently.
I'll tell you what. Look, will be one to watch as well is Ollie Robinson on Australian pitches. Yeah. He bowls just short, a bit like Glenn. I mean, I'm not comparing him with Glenn McGrath at all, but he's that sort of style of bowler. He bowls just short of a length, and on a pitch like Brisbane, if he bowls that length, he could cause a few problems for especially the left-handers.
Hopefully he's managed to sanitize his social media just to make sure that nothing else gets found.
He was only 16 then. Give him.
I completely give him a break. I think it's ridiculous that he was hauled over the coals for something he said when he was a child. But we digress. Yeah. But I'm just hoping that maybe his social media has been sanitized.
Surely he can pay someone to do that.
I honestly think that he can do a good thing for England. The only downside with England is they haven't got a top class spinner, which has been their downfall over the last 10 years or more since. Moeen Ali, is a big. However much he was maligned, he's a big loss for England. But I know he hasn't performed at the top level as he would have liked over the last few years. But he's somebody you can sort of like throw in the ball, and he can sort of like get you something if you need him. I'm not sure Dom Bess or Jack Leach is that sort of player.
Joe Root after taking
Joe Root, would he get 6 for 8 or something? 5 for 6 or something? Oh yeah. He did a Michael Clark. Michael Clark did that in India once. He got 6 for 9. It was outrageous. But yeah, I mean, if there's a disgusting dust bowl in Sydney, maybe Joe Root will come on and get 5 for and win nick the final test for England, so they go down only 4-1 rather than 5-0. Who knows?
The thing with the pitches now in Australia, in the past, you could just sort of like predict what was going to happen in the pitches. Brisbane's fast and bouncy.
Yeah.
Sydney is a turner, which is not anymore because it's a drop in pitch.
Adelaide's a road that breaks up on the final day.
Exactly, and then put the whacker exactly the same. Like a road which breaks up on the last 2 days. That's not going to happen anymore. So that's got to play into like England's hands. Everybody's saying the pitches will suit Australia. We don't know I don't think we know what they're going to be like because they're all dropping pitches more or less, except for the Adelaide Oval and Brisbane. The other 3 are all dropping pitches. Now we're not even sure whether we're going to go to Perth because of Mark McGowan and his wonderful ways. So we could end up playing in Tasmania, which would definitely suit Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad.
I like the idea of Canberra as well. I think it might be.
I think so.
Well, let's put it this way, boys. If out of the choice of a green tinge wicket in Hobart or a flat track in Manuka Oval, where would Australia go? Only one choice. Only one.
Well,
choice.
I think it makes more sense quarantine wise as well. I think the ACT are opening up. I think it's today or tomorrow, as they've reached their 70% and that kind of thing, and like they'll have no borders between New South Wales and the ACT soon. So I think they won't have any hassle playing at Manuka because I think they'll go seamlessly through Sydney to Manuka or
they'd make that the 5th test. I think they would. They'd just play it'd be the 4th test in Sydney and New Year's, and they'd schedule another one from January 10th to 14th or something, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that probably makes more sense as far as quarantine goes. Look, after the test that wasn't with Afghanistan that was meant to be played in Tasmania,
such a shame.
But they essentially owed a test. I mean, they haven't had a test in, I think it's 3 years or something in Tassie, and I'd love to see it in Tassie. I think it would really make for an interesting contest, and I think like the people of Tasmania would go out in their droves to see that. I'm not sure why it's not on the bloody list already. Why is it not there?
I know capacity of the ground, capacity of Hobart to hold enough hotels. But you're right. Like it'd make a lot of sense.
Well, look, I think the CA, for better or for worse, they've put their chips in the basket of Perth will host the last test. I'm not confident. I think it'll get to a point where it'll either be stick or twist. It's going to come sooner rather than later, whether they need guarantees that they won't be doing quarantine and they will in fact have people and players being able to go seamlessly into Western Australia to play the last test.
England kind of arrived in the country to start the series and not know where all the tests are going to be played. That's
exactly right.
That's just ridiculous.
Exactly right. I think that will come soon, and I do wonder with McGowan if it will actually become a political tool that they will let them in because I think there will be such an outcry if they don't host the test that it may hurt him politically.
Time will tell. Be nice. I mean, it wouldn't obviously work from a quarantine perspective, but love to see them line up on a green one at the Basin Reserve in Wellington or something. That'd be great. But that's just my Kiwiness shining through.
Well, I mean, that's the next best thing is was it Hobart, isn't it?
Yeah, close to something like that.
Well, don't forget the last time Australia played a test in Hobart, they got absolutely smashed by South Africa. So I think that was the last time they played there. So I think they're maybe a little bit gun shy about going down there.
The Lions play in Hobart fairly often when they go out there. So, some of the England players have probably got experience playing on Bell Reef. I know he's not there, but Jofra Archer played for the Hobart Hurricanes and Stuart Broad's played for them as well. So there's a bit of experience there, yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is, the other thing that they're a bit hesitant about is playing in Hobart, just generally, like with the weather. I think I remember they played the West Indies out there.
The weather. Have you been to
Headingley?
Have you been to Chesterland Street? I think it'll be fine. Yeah. Don't you worry. Yeah.
But look, look, if this is the case, they'll be playing, end of January, which I mean is probably the perfect window to be playing in over. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
All right, just quickly before we wrap up, Old Man Broad and Anderson, probably their last Ashes tour.
Oh, Jimmy's got a few more in him, doesn't he?
Jimmy will play another one. Jimmy's so fit it's ridiculous. I'm not sure about Stuart Broad. When you get in calf injuries, that's an old man injury. So
it's back injuries, isn't it? Or hip injuries.
Yeah, no, this will be their last tour. I mean, can't see it happening anymore.
Yeah, I can't see them coming back down under again. I don't think it'll be their last series for England. I think they'll probably finish at home against whoever the opponent happens to be. But I don't see them being particularly effective. I mean, Jimmy's great. Jimmy's got an amazing control, can, swing the ball around corners and can have it on a string. But and I hear what you say, Phil. You never know. Maybe the pitches will be different to what we expect. And maybe he will be impactful. But the last time he went down under, he bowled 4 overs in Brisbane, and then he was injured. He was out for the rest of the series. So I just really hope that kind of thing doesn't happen again.
What we need is all of both of the team's best players out there.
Yeah.
So it's a proper contest. We don't
Absolutely.
want injuries on either side, and hopefully Broad and Anderson will have their their dream tours. But I mean, Jimmy's never really done well in Australia. Be honest. Stuart Broad's not the same thing. His dad was much better than in Australia than he was.
England are just lucky that they play so many tests at home. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Do you think, because it seems to be at the moment that it's one or the other, or at least it has been for the last kind of 2 years or so, that they generally go for one or the other and very rarely play together. Do you think that will be the case in Australia?
I think they'll pick Ollie Robinson, Broad and Anderson for that first test. I think Mark Wood is too... If he breaks down in the first test, then England are fucked, to be honest with you. So I can't see him getting... The Anderson, Broad and Robinson would be the 3. And then you've got to pick a spinner. But I'm not sure whether that's done better. Unless Joe Root is your spinner now, I don't know. Yeah,
he's the captain and he's expected to score the lion's share of the runs, no pun intended. And if he's going to be a spinner as well, now surely they'll be picking somebody else. But yeah, maybe they're going to have to pick them together because they don't have too much firepower in other places. So
I mean they've gone with 4 bowlers in this series against India, but that was, like you say, was on home soil. So it was doing a lot more than it will do in Australia apparently. But we'll wait to see. I personally can't see them splitting those 2 up because, like you say, there isn't much else, to be honest with you. So they've thrown all their eggs in one basket with those 3. I mean, Sakib Mahmood would have been like a...
He seems like Jofra Archer light in some cases, doesn't he?
What do you think about Chris Wokes?
Yeah, well, Chris Wokes will be the... I think he'll be like the all rounder. So he'll come in and be the fourth seamer, I suppose.
Yeah, done well in the IPL too.
Yeah,
done well in the IPL.
I like Chris Wokes. When he came back against India, he hadn't played for a long time, and then he basically got straight back on the bike and was one of England's better players towards the end of that series. So I quite like. He's grown on me over the years. I wasn't sure about him when he first came into the side, but he's definitely a wholehearted player. And he's not a bad. He's a bowling all rounder, but he can bat. So
he's another option.
I think you need that strength and a bit more.
For me, you're not gonna pick Broad and Anderson together. I think you'll pick one or the other. And to start with, I think probably Wokes to supplement. So yeah, we'll have to see. But they don't have an embarrassment of riches, do they?
No. Time will tell, lads. Time will tell.